All right, what is up, everybody? We are back for another episode of our weekly Wednesday live Q&A. Last week was my brother's birthday, so I took the week off because we were celebrating with him. But we are back for another great topic, as always. I'm getting my Instagram live going now. Hopefully things are going, and we are live on Instagram as well. All right, so this week's topic, we are talking about the different stages of contest prep. And I had some kind of funny comments on there, some addition. Ben had a good comment. But just to break it down, we're going to run through the stages. Different stages to a contest prep, right? We don't just go from fat city to stage lean overnight. It takes a long time. So we're going to go through the stages, and I did have a couple of questions, so we're going to start off with those first, and then we're just going to get right to kind of my points of view on these different stages themselves. So as always, I did ask for questions, and people provided them, so we're going to get right to those right now. Chase, I see that you're here, man. One of our questions, if I could get things to load properly. Usually I'm just spot on with this, but as you guys know, these are live videos, so sometimes shit just doesn't go the way that you want it, but we're just going to roll with the punches here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I do appreciate you guys tuning in and sharing as always. So we're going to get right to it now. Alrighty. Slight delay. Ben asked, what are some of the remedies that you implement with yourself and your clients to making stage 5, 6 more tolerable? Do you ever actually enjoy the suffering? So that's a very good question. Ben, thank you for leading us off. So Ben is referring to pretty lean versus peeled, as I put it. So that is a tough one. And there's nothing that you really can prepare yourself for is to being hungry. You know that person had to suffer in order to get to that level. So is there any way to make it more tolerable? I would say, obviously, like, I'm hoping that somebody's taking diet breaks along the way. That hopefully that makes it a little bit easier. Hopefully we're not getting too fat. So 5, 6, is a long time. Hopefully we're bringing calories up. Hopefully we're saving at least cardio or some kind of fat burner for the end. Those are the things, that I'm hoping that, that people are doing in order to make stages 5 and 6 more tolerable. But at the end of the day, like, this is truly one of the toughest things that we could do to our bodies. And that's what I tell people, like, right when we start, it's, when, in order to get truly stage lean, I think a lot of people, they see what staged leanness looks like. They think it looks cool. They like the cuts. They like the shreds. They like the feathering in the muscles, but they don't understand what it takes to get there. And once they get there, like, damn, this fucking sucks. In order to say that, sorry for the language, but it does. It's not pleasant. It may look cool, but it doesn't feel great. And that's what I'm just being truthful about that. Anybody who's gotten to a very, very low body fat percentage, it just does not feel that well, and it's not supposed to be held for a very long time. All right, Matt said that he did a video on this, and he said he called it the stages prepped, and how when you're in one stage, you aren't satisfied and you want to go to the next one. So yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that's very hard to overcome, is understanding like what stage you're currently in. So like I put up a picture on Instagram a little bit ago, asking people what stage they thought I was in. According to my belt, I'm actually at my lowest belt mark from my Inzer belt that I was at the end of my last contest prep, which is odd for me. I guess I'm like 10 pounds away. I don't really remember how soon I changed it last time, but here I am. I don't think I'll go any lower. Maybe one notch lower, but it was pretty tight today, so I definitely have some room to lose. But yeah, so what Matt was saying is, for instance, I might be in like stage 5 right now, pretty lean. I'm definitely not shredded. Let's be honest about that. I'm very far from shredded. But I am currently not satisfied, right? You're always chasing the next level. Or you want to go back a level and you're like, damn, like I'm not as big as I was. Like I kind of want to be big again. You're just never satisfied with what phase you're in. You kind of want the strength from the previous phase, a lower phase, or you just want to be leaner because it looks cooler, and that's the next phase. So Matt, that was a very good point, so thanks for the addition in that. It is not always, you're not always satisfied with the level that you're at. Now Marcus did ask a pretty good question here. He said, how much over stage weight do I recommend? And that's on a need situation, and Macy just arrived here. But I don't like to put set numbers because everybody holds their body weight differently. I'll give a range instead. So a range for guys, like 25 to 30 pounds maximum. For ladies, 15 to 20 pounds maximum. I would say right in that general vicinity. Anything over that, and your prep's just going to be long, and then you're going to end up suffering even more in stages 5 and or 6. So he says that he's in his off season right now. He's still relatively lean, but he's not trying to become a fat ass. So what I would say is that if you notice that you're still making solid progress, if your weights in the gym are still going up, if your physique still looks good, then there's not necessarily a need to gain an exorbitant amount of weight. Now I know some people swear by it, and yeah, you'll be able to move more weight over time, but is it worth it? I would say no. That you don't need to gain 40 to 50 pounds over stage weight in order to help gain lean tissue. Obviously, we know that if you're in a caloric surplus, you have all the capability to gain lean tissue, and that's what I did this past season. I'm not that big of a guy. Like, let's be honest, I'm going to compete at, and I've said it before, mainly on Instagram because like people ask me, but I'll compete at like 167 pounds, 68, to 170. I doubt I'll be 170. We'll see. Maybe carved up. But I got to a high this off season. Well, I was at one point in time like 203. That was like my all-time high, but then I brought it down to more like 195, 193, and I hung out there for a very good while. And I did that on purpose. I was still gaining muscle, but I didn't want to have to lose. Courtney says I'm huge. Get out of here, Courtney. I didn't want to have to lose a ton of weight, because if I had to lose a ton of weight, then I would have the potential to lose more muscle mass along the way. So I feel you, Marcus. You don't necessarily want to gain too much just for the sake of gaining, but you definitely want to be able to be in a caloric surplus so that you could actually gain lean tissue over a period of time. All right, Joe asks, what stages do you feel most people find the most mentally challenging? So Joe, that was a great question, so thank you for asking that. If I had to say the most mentally challenging stages, I would say it would be the skinny fat stage, which is stage 3, and the peeled stage, which is stage 6. And I know that maybe some of you weren't thinking that I would say that for this particular answer, but the skinny fat stage is a tough one because you've already been dieting for a long time, and at that stage you're neither big nor lean, and you're just like, what the hell am I doing with myself? Like, do I even lift? You see the scale go down, but you're not necessarily visually looking better. Your strength might be starting to dip at that stage as well. So that could be tough on you mentally. And of course, the peeled stage is very mentally challenging, just because you're always second guessing yourself. Like, I'm not at the point right now where I feel small, but if I were to get into the 160s, which I probably will, I'm like, damn, like, I haven't seen that for 3 years. I'm gonna feel small. And I think that I think a lot of people get caught up, and even myself, I do too, because when I diet down, like, my off-stage look is a lot different than my on-stage look, if that makes sense. So, like, when I get on stage and I get pumped up and I pose correctly, that look is going to be much different than my just standing here swimming in a large t-shirt, So, that could definitely play mind games with you in regards to that stage in particular. The peeled stage, your leanest stage, you're not tanned up, you're just more shrunken, you're more emaciated, you're definitely depleted of carbs, so you're definitely not full, but when you get pumped up, when you get carbs in you, when you're under the stage lights, when you have the tan on, your physique totally changes, so you just can't let that stage play too much of a mind game with yourself. But that definitely, those two phases, at what stages do you start seeing hormonal, mental, physical fatigue changes? So I'm really glad Ashley asked that question, and I would say definitely stage 5. And by my standards, I would say that I am in stage 5 right now. The pretty lean phase. I mean, I am like 10 pounds away from my stage weight, so I would consider myself pretty lean. This past week, maybe 2, maybe a week and a half, I've noticed some fatigue. Sleep is starting to slip a little bit. My performance is alright. It's on a day-to-day. Hormonal changes, I can't say that I'm there quite yet, but maybe in the next couple of weeks, I'll notice that a little bit. Of course, I am supplementing pretty hard with Core Nutritionals products to keep those things in check. So maybe I've been delaying it as long as possible, but that is definitely inevitable. But yeah, I would say definitely in stage 5 you start to feel it. If you start to feel it any earlier, your rate of loss might be off. Maybe you just went too fast in your contest prep, but I would say by stage 5, somewhere in stage 5, the pretty lean phase, you're gonna feel it. And I will stop here for a second and say that the body likes homeostasis. It likes to remain the same. It likes to roughly eat the same amount of calories every day. It roughly likes to have the same energy expenditure every day. It roughly likes to hold the same body weight every day, and from week to week, to month, because that is the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance leads to survival. So when we get to past the skinny fat phase, I would say, or even the lean phase, your body can handle so much. But when it gets to, the fat phase, up there, that's more stress on the body. I'm actually going to move this guy over here real quick, maybe better lighting on this side. Live video. But anyway, let's see if I can get that to stay. All right, we're good. We're good to go. So yeah, I would say that once you get like to stage 5 or 6, once you get yourself past the homeostasis part of your body adjusting, so like let's say your maintenance, your walking around weight. Like if I had to say, I mean, of course I've been in a caloric surplus, but for myself, I always use myself as an example. Obviously, I know myself best. That I can walk around comfortably at about, I would say, 191 pounds, 193 pounds. Like that's solid walking around weight. That's not me pushing the calories. Obviously, like sometimes I walk around at like 203, like I said earlier. But like 193, 195, maybe even. That's like my walking around weight. So I'm definitely underneath that. I'm almost 20 pounds underneath my normal walking around comfortable weight. Obviously, that range varies slightly. So let's just say we'll say on the low end 190. So I'm 13 pounds under it, and that's under my homeostasis point. So my body, it doesn't like it. I mean, I'm the one that's doing it, but your body doesn't know that you're prepping for a bodybuilding competition. So it is going to try to fight you in order to keep at homeostasis as long as possible. So essentially you don't starve or anything. But yeah, by stage 5, you're probably going to be feeling it. Is there anything that you could do to prevent that? Is unique, but have you ever measured the average pound loss between stages 5 and 6 with your clients yourself? And Mike, that was a great question. Might have been the best question of the day, actually. So, Mike, you get the gold star. I'm very happy that he asked that question simply because I feel like a lot of people disregard rate of loss during their contest prep, and I'm talking about at every single stage. So yes, Mike, ideally within the first phase of contest prep, which I already went through, now it didn't happen for me because my weight was a little bit stubborn, but ideally what I would like to see is somebody lose maybe 1 to 2 pounds a week. And that's a maybe upwards of 2 if they're a bigger person, closer to 1.5 for an average person. As contest prep goes along, so I'm doing my contest prep in 3 phases. I'm sure everybody knows that by now. Phase 2, you could hold more towards 1.5. The third phase, just my personal phase. So let's say I'm in the pretty lean phase right now. I have 2 more weeks of this phase, which is just my second approach to my diet period. So I'm going to take a diet break coming up, but after that, I'm probably going to slow things down a little bit, my rate of loss. So I will transfer from a pound to 1.5 pounds, and I'll transfer that to about 0.5 to 1 pound per week going up to that. And the only reason why I like to slow things down at the end, I think that's where like a lot of people try to push, is at the very, very end. They try to push to get the weight off, and that's one way that you could just end up losing a ton of muscle, unfortunately. My plan is to, as my calories are higher, I wanted to try to push the weight loss to get as many pounds off at the beginning, but then afterwards, I wanted to slow things down. And I think that's a smarter way of doing it, just my 2 cents, I guess, mainly because that's the way that I'm approaching it, and I think that I'm a pretty smart fella. But you don't want to be losing 3 pounds a week at the very end of your contest prep, because that's where you're most susceptible to muscle loss. Like at the very beginning of your contest prep, you're not necessarily super susceptible. Obviously, from time to time, you can lose muscle, if you're not doing your diet right, if training's going bad, if you are not supplementing correctly. But at the very end, for most people, because you've been in a caloric deficit the most time, that's when you're most susceptible to muscle loss. So if you were to slow things down a little bit at the very end, then hopefully, ideally, you will not lose as much muscle as possible. And I'm still trying to get the lighting correct. I knew I should have gone over there, but whatever. So yeah, that's a tough one, but ideally you want to slow it down at the end of contest prep. Once again, that's just my 2 cents. But if you do, you won't lose as much muscle, hopefully, and then you'll have a better physique for it. Jenny said she's currently at stage 3, and that's her least favorite stage. Yeah, the skinny fat stage is terrible. Thomas also said that as well on Instagram. Krista asked, how much artificial sweeteners affect going from pretty lean to peeled? Also, how far out of your show should you be considered peeled? So I'll start with the first one, artificial sweeteners. I just saw a post today that are artificial sweeteners healthy, and it was some outrageous amount per day that's considered unhealthy. So yeah, as far as health goes, you are good to go. I don't necessarily eat a ton of artificial sweeteners. I know people with like a lot of lower calories tend to do that just because they're having like Walden Farms and all that shit with the technically no calories. Is that going to stop you from getting peeled? Not necessarily. With some people, they just have a negative response to it, though. Their body just holds water, so maybe you're not going to see the scale move. So ideally, what I at least try to say is maybe 1 to 2 weeks out, pull the artificial sweeteners out if you can, if you get away with it. Is that going to make or break your physique? Absolutely not. But that's just one thing, to consider, especially from a holding water standpoint. Maybe the scale is not going to move because of all the artificial sweeteners that you're going to be doing intaking. And then she said, how far out from your show should you be considered peeled? Mostly in the last 2 weeks. yeah, I mean, I hope in the last 2 weeks, that you're definitely peeled. I would say 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks out actually, just because you could actually start increasing your food. And I've talked about this before. In a perfect scenario, in a perfect scenario, you'd want to be increasing your food into a show. So that is why I would like to personally see somebody absolutely peeled 4 weeks out from their first show, and then they could start raising their food from there. I don't know if that was the last question. Karen just had a comment that said, I like the look of being peeled and feeling like shit. Yeah, I mean, that's what you do. She said if you're peeled and you're gonna feel like shit. If you're at super duper low body fat percentage, it's just kind of the nature of the beast. I mean, it's hard to say, and I feel like not a lot of people talk about that. And guys, like I said earlier, I mean, I'm not complaining about it. I'm just being real about it. It's just like I started to feel it this week. I mean, this is like my 25th week or something of dieting, not continuously. Obviously, I said I took one diet break already. I'm about to take my second in a couple weeks here. So yeah, I'm gonna be feeling a little better. Hopefully, my performance goes up. But as the body fat goes down, like your body's gonna start fighting you. You can't really do much to trick it. I've talked about that before. Your body's pretty smart. It's going to do what it wants to do. It doesn't care that you want to diet for a bodybuilding competition. Its main goal is to survive. So, yeah, this sport's definitely not for the faint of heart. And I guess Joe is going to end with one last question here. He said the earliest stage that you would use a diet break. Really, Joe, I mean, that all depends, like, how your rate of loss is going. Hopefully, if things are moving smoothly, I've actually let somebody's first phase go longer because the weight was just falling off of them. With me, although I am in my second phase of dieting, I would consider myself, the pretty lean. I would say you could even take a diet break at the skinny fat phase. So phase 3, according to my numbers here. You could definitely take a diet break at phase 3, just to fill back out a little bit, help with performance, maybe help a little bit more mentally. But then after that, it should be planned out, But I mean, if you're really suffering and your weight's stalling, throw a diet break in there and see what happens. So my schedule has been pretty much planned out, and within the next couple of weeks, when I do take another diet break, I will put that information out publicly as to what my diet looked like, what my plan looked like, and how the execution came out. You guys might be surprised to. I'll actually put all the data together too, just so it's really encompassing. But where I took my diet breaks and everything, and of course when the season ends, I'll kind of wrap it up and give out all the information, that I've gathered via myself with my diet breaks and everything. But yeah, phase 3, Joe, skinny fat, go ahead and throw in a diet break. That's going to be it, guys, for tonight. So I do appreciate you guys tuning in to these live videos. As always, they will be posted tomorrow on my YouTube account. Hopefully the connection was okay on my Facebook. I know it was all right on the Instagram. But yeah, so I'll probably keep them fairly short from now on, just because they are kind of mentally taxing. I mean, we're damn near at a half an hour anyway. So I'll try to keep them right around a half an hour. But as always, guys, thank you for asking great questions. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I'll see you guys